Celeste opened the social media app and saw her friend Justin's latest post. The caption for the 9 pictures was 3 words: alumni reunion. Justin was Michael's classmate from Harvard. In those 9 photos, Celeste quickly spotted Michael. It wasn't hard to find him, as Justin's 4th photo was a couple shot of Michael and Mia. Even the outfit Michael was wearing was one she had picked out for him herself before he left that morning. Celeste looked at Michael in the photo, a question forming in her mind. Did he ever smile that happily when he was with her? She couldn't recall him doing so. Ding! Cuckoo Story reminds you to subscribe to the channel for more videos. Celeste and Justin had several mutual friends, almost all of whom were Michael's classmates or colleagues from his workplace in Washington. Mia and Michael look so good together in this picture. They really were the best-looking couple at our school dance back then. Looking at them now, it's like we're all still in college. He's handsome, she's beautiful. Mia still looks gorgeous. I knew there had to be a reason Michael suddenly changed his mind about not coming to the alumni reunion after he said he wouldn't. Turns out Mia is in Washington on a business trip. Celeste wanted to read more of her friend's comments, but when she refreshed the feed, she found that Justin's post was gone. It wasn't deleted. He must have realized he hadn't blocked her. A message popped up on her phone. More friends and relatives wishing her happy birthday. Besides Michael, pretty much everyone in her life had sent their blessings. 2 weeks ago, Michael had promised her himself that he would come back to celebrate her birthday today. Seeing the birthday texts from everyone on her phone now, Celeste's slightly pale face curved into a faint smile. She had already received many surprise gifts at home today. These gifts, like the birthday texts filling her phone, were piling up into small mountains, but the most important one was missing. If the post she'd accidentally seen earlier counted as a surprise gift, Celeste thought, then this surprise was certainly unexpected. In the evening, at dinner time, Celeste took out the cake she had made that afternoon from the fridge. She sent Michael a message. "Where are you? Are you finished with work?" He didn't reply immediately. Before going to bed that night, Celeste checked her phone. The message she had sent Michael that afternoon still had no response. Celeste, wearing a blue silk nightgown, sat on the bed and called Michael. The phone rang several times before someone on the other end picked up. "Hello." Celeste could tell Michael's voice on the phone already carried a hint of intoxication. She pressed her lips together. "Where are you?" Michael reached up and pressed his temples. "In the car." As if remembering something, Michael added, "I finished work late today." "You should get some rest. Don't wait up for me." Celeste was about to say something else when she heard a familiar female voice from the other end of the phone. "Michael, what are you doing? Who are you talking to?" Celeste felt annoyed. The phone's reception was so clear these days that she could hear Mia's voice perfectly. A moment later, presumably after Michael had placated the person beside him and the whining female voice was gone, Celeste spoke again. "Is that Mia?" she asked. The person on the other end of the phone seemed to fall silent for a moment, but finally answered her question. "Yes." "Is she in your car?" "Yes, she drank too much." "I'm taking her back to the hotel first," Michael explained, adding, "I ran into her at the formal event today." He offered no further explanation. Celeste looked up and saw her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window not far away. "What are you to her?" Celeste couldn't help but ask. It was late at night. Why was her husband taking a single woman back to a hotel? Especially a woman who was Michael's first love. The person on the other end responded with silence. Celeste hung up the phone. Late into the night, she lay alone in the king-size bed, feeling a chill. She had never planned to live overseas permanently, but because Michael was responsible for overseas business, she had followed him. She had no other family overseas besides Michael. Celeste clutched the silk fabric near her chest. She felt like crying, but on her birthday, she was supposed to be happy. Celeste eventually fell asleep with a frown. Celeste felt something pressing down on her, making it hard to breathe, and finally opened her eyes in the darkness. Michael was propped above her. She could recognize those somewhat flirtatious eyes even in the dark. "Celeste, happy birthday," Michael said in a hoarse voice. After saying this, he put his arm around Celeste's waist and lowered his head, intending to kiss her. Celeste had just been woken up by him, but as Michael leaned in, she suddenly turned her head away. The kiss landed on her neck instead. Michael seemed displeased by her evasion. He sucked hard on the side of her neck. Not happy. Celeste mumbled and then pushed him away from her. Michael frowned. He sat up from the bed, opened the box on the nightstand, and handed it to Celeste. I came back too late today, sorry. I didn't forget your birthday gift, Michael said, turning on the floor lamp. In the light, Celeste saw the gift in Michael's hand. It was a ring. I got this pink diamond at an auction in Hong Kong during my last business trip. Didn't you like it before? See if it fits, Michael said, already taking Celeste's hand and holding the ring, ready to slide the pink diamond onto her finger. Her jewelry box had no shortage of rings. Because when she was younger, she had casually mentioned liking to collect all sorts of rings. Ever since then, every gift Michael gave her was a ring. But Michael didn't know that her carefully guarded hope back then was that he would give her an engagement ring. Seeing Celeste lost in thought, Michael couldn't help but ask, "You don't like it?" Celeste withdrew her hand and turned the ring on her finger. It was actually a bit big. Although the family had hired a cook these past few years, she didn't like life overseas after all. She had lost a lot of weight since coming abroad, and her finger size had naturally decreased significantly. The ring wasn't quite right. Celeste suddenly looked up. She was about to say they should talk, but at that moment, Michael's phone suddenly rang. They were very close, and the moment Michael's phone rang, Celeste clearly saw the caller ID. It was Mia again. Michael instinctively glanced at Celeste. Although Celeste didn't speak, the meaning in her eyes was obvious. She didn't want Michael to answer the call. Didn't Mia know Michael was married? Didn't she know that calling a married man at this hour meant his wife would know? If Michael had any respect for her, he wouldn't answer the call in front of her. The air in the room seemed to grow very still, so quiet that only the ringing of Michael's phone could be heard. The phone stopped ringing, but the next moment, Michael's phone rang again. It was the same person. This time, Michael got right out of bed. I need to take this call. Michael walked out onto the bedroom balcony, holding the phone in one hand and the other in his trouser pocket. He looked tall and imposing even in the dark. Celeste sat on the bed, watching Michael through the glass door of the balcony. They were still separated by a door. Before long, Michael returned from the balcony. He reached for his jacket on the chair. She's not feeling well, so... Celeste looked down at the time. It was the middle of the night. Michael, do you know what day it is today? Seeing Celeste's face turn serious, Michael suddenly felt a pang of panic. He didn't answer Celeste's question, just explained in a low voice, she's alone in Washington. What if I insisted you stay tonight? Celeste felt exhausted, perhaps because of Michael's earlier evasion, or perhaps simply because she felt truly worn out lately. I'll explain when I get back. Michael was silent. Michael looked down at his screen. Sorry. He left. Sitting on the bed, Celeste could no longer maintain her facade. Tears streamed from Celeste's eyes, silently soaking the sheets. She had only endured living overseas for Michael. She had given up her comfortable life back home to be with him abroad. She didn't adapt to the climate, the culture, or anything here. She only adapted to everything Michael adapted to. But Michael didn't see her struggles. She remembered 2 weeks ago, Celeste and Michael went out for dinner. When it was time to pay, she took Michael's phone to pay. There was a bit of a line, so she waited for a while. A message popped up on Michael's phone. Celeste was usually very discreet and wouldn't ask to check his phone. But the reply that just popped up wasn't hidden. When the screen lit up, Celeste saw it clearly at a glance. It wasn't a message from a friend, but from a stranger online. It was a message on Michael's account. She knew Michael's lock screen password. She tapped on it, and it automatically jumped to the stranger's reply to Michael's comment. Michael's original comment was also displayed before her eyes. My current wife and I are just suitable, not in love. Even though they had known each other since childhood, even though they had been married for several years, in Michael's heart, it was just suitable. Let's get a divorce. Celeste sat on the bed, holding her phone, and typed these 5 words. Looking at the send button on the screen, her finger hovered in the air. After a brief pause, she finally clicked send. After sending the message, Celeste figured Michael was still driving and wouldn't reply immediately. In the middle of the night, Celeste got out of bed and started packing her luggage. She hadn't intended to use threatening words like breakup or divorce to force Michael to choose between her and Mia. This was a notification, not a negotiation. There were many things in the house, but she didn't seem to want to take that much. Celeste had already packed her suitcase and sent a message to the butler, asking him to arrange for the driver to take her to the airport. Waiting for the driver downstairs in the living room, Celeste looked at the birthday cake still on the dining table. It had a pair of little angels on top, which she had spent a considerable amount of time learning to make. What a shame, Celeste couldn't help but think. She had carefully prepared the cake, wanting to share it with him, but it wouldn't happen now. Let's talk when I get back. Don't be impulsive. When Celeste saw this message, she didn't say anything, didn't reply, and put her phone back in her pocket. At the airport, Celeste was relieved to find a seat on the next available flight. Celeste's luggage was so minimal she didn't even check luggage. After check-in and security, as she reached the border control, Celeste's phone rang. Seeing the caller ID, she immediately hung up. Michael was once the path Celeste had been determined to take, even if it meant hitting a wall. Now she was finally tired of running, ready to stop, turn back, and choose a new path. But the scars on her body hadn't healed and still hurt. After clearing security, Celeste finally took out the phone that had been vibrating nonstop. The screen showed over a dozen missed calls, all from the same person. Celeste checked the time. On the day after her birthday, Michael had called her more times than he probably had in the entire past year. Asterisk, where are you? Celeste, where are you going in the middle of the night? Asterisk. Looking at the time on her phone, she realized Michael must have returned home in the early morning. Michael, answer the phone. Asterisk, the driver said you went to the airport in the middle of the night. Why? I'm coming to find you right away. Stay where you are. Asterisk. When Celeste saw the last message, her expression finally changed. Michael was coming to the airport? A staff member in the lounge walked up to Celeste to remind her that she could now board. Celeste stood up, pulling her 14-inch carry-on suitcase, and walked through the VIP channel into the plane. Her phone rang again. Hello. She answered the phone as soon as it connected. Where are you? Michael's voice sounded rushed, with a hint of inexplicable tension. The airport. Come out, Michael said. We need to talk properly. Where do you want to go now? Don't be angry. If you have time, come back. We can handle the divorce paperwork. At that moment, Michael felt genuine panic. He thought being with Celeste was suitable, but he had never considered divorce. Perhaps without even realizing it himself, when he married Celeste, he had never imagined a day when they would divorce. But now, Celeste had put the very issue he had never considered right in front of him. Michael, I'm tired. I've been chasing after you all these years, and I'm tired. I want to stop. She paused. Let's get a divorce. I don't want to continue. After saying this, Celeste hung up the phone. Celeste woke up feeling groggy and rubbed her eyes. But the moment she opened her eyes, Celeste was stunned. This room was the bedroom she had lived in from childhood until before her marriage. Celeste sat up in bed. Beneath her was the soft king-size bed, not the uncomfortable seat on the plane. Celeste jumped out of bed and ran barefoot into the bathroom nearby. The mirror over the bathroom vanity showed Celeste's current appearance. 20-year-old her was exceptionally beautiful. Thanks to ample sleep, her entire face looked radiant and rosy. Her slightly wavy long hair was scattered messily over her shoulders. This was the year she had just returned from studying in the UK. And it was the year she got engaged to Michael. Celeste, what are you doing? You're supposed to go pick up your Michael today, remember? Hurry up, don't be late. Just as Celeste was staring blankly in the bathroom, the bedroom door outside was knocked upon, and her mother's voice came through. Celeste was startled. She picked up her phone, saw the date, and realized the situation. Michael was a year older than her, but because he didn't adapt well to life overseas, he returned home immediately after finishing his undergraduate degree. The Sterling and Hayes families were both prominent and influential in Oakwood. Their houses were even located next to each other. Celeste's family and Michael's family could be considered a genuinely well-matched pair of powerful families. Before she graduated from university, her mother had already told her to be prepared for marriage. So, when she first heard her mother say the family needed to arrange a marriage alliance, Celeste knew it would be her. Her family had given her a choice before: either inherit the family business after graduation or live the life she wanted according to her own ideas. Celeste chose the second option. After leaving her room, she took the elevator downstairs. It was the weekend and already noon. Her father and Eleanor were both home. As Celeste stepped out of the elevator, Eleanor, who was sitting on the sofa holding a financial newspaper just like their father, was the first to look at her. Then, Eleanor exclaimed in surprise, "Miss, you're dressed like that?" It was summer, and Celeste was just wearing a simple t-shirt and long pants. Although the outfit wasn't cheap, for Celeste, having not a single piece of decent jewelry on seemed very unlike her usual style. Their father looked up when he heard Eleanor's words. "Ran out of money?" their father asked. "No way, right? Didn't I buy you that blue diamond necklace you wanted last time? What else did you spend money on?" Eleanor asked, slightly astonished. Celeste felt a pang in her heart. Part of the reason she hadn't wanted to go overseas back then was because of her family. The feeling of being pampered by her dad, Mom, and Emily was infinitely better than being alone overseas. When she had agreed to go overseas with Michael back then, she had been arrogant enough to think Michael would be like family, but she was wrong. Now, hearing the voices of her dad and Emily nearby, Celeste raised an eyebrow. "What's wrong?" She looked down at her outfit. Isn't it just grabbing a casual meal? Did they expect her to dress up and attend formally just like before, whenever Michael's name was mentioned? Did Michael deserve it? Eleanor didn't say anything, just exchanged a look with their father. Both father and daughter saw a hint of shock in each other's eyes. Celeste liking Michael next door was never really a secret in the family. At the dinner table, Robert saw Celeste eating heartily and seemingly in a good mood. He tentatively asked, "We're having dinner with Michael's family tonight. You remember, right?" Actually, they were going to discuss the engagement. Celeste didn't even look up. "Yes, I know." She had to admit, the cook's soup at home was still the best. Eleanor couldn't control her volume. "Didn't you tell Dad before that you wanted to marry him?" Celeste's expression was calm. "Oh, I suddenly realized Dad's earlier considerations were very reasonable. I've changed my mind. I don't care for it." Eleanor moved her lips. She couldn't help but reach out to touch Celeste's forehead. This was so unusual for her. Their father's reaction was the quickest. Although he didn't know why his older daughter had suddenly changed her mind, he didn't actually think highly of Michael. Their father suddenly mentioned Mark, the man Celeste had considered for a marriage alliance before. When Celeste married Michael that year, she had received a wedding gift from him. It wasn't jewelry or luxury goods. It was a set of first edition books by an artist she liked, already out of print, and it even came with a signed copy. She hadn't expected that the person she liked, who she had even grown up with, would send a gift less thoughtful than a stranger's. Arriving at the formal event, Michael, who had just returned from university overseas, still had a hint of boyishness about him. His expressive eyes curved slightly when he saw her, a smile flashing through them. Celeste nodded politely. "Michael, it's been a while. But today, things seemed a little different." "Bad mood?" Michael directly pulled out the chair beside him. The two families were meeting specifically for Celeste and Michael's marriage. But who knew Celeste would suddenly refuse the marriage at home during lunch? Soon after, when both sets of parents tried to discuss the children's marriage, Robert subtly steered the conversation away, and the atmosphere at the dinner table immediately became a bit strange. Eleanor rested her chin on her hand, thinking Celeste seemed to be eating a lot today. Michael's father sensed that Celeste did not want to marry into their family. Celeste looked up and refused the proposal from Michael's family. Celeste later learned that when Michael returned home that year, he was still in contact with Mia, How could she possibly be the obedient, naive fool she once was now? After Celeste finished speaking, she felt full and excused herself to go to the restroom. After washing her hands, Celeste saw someone standing by the garden nearby. Celeste. When Michael saw Celeste come out, he put out the cigarette he was holding. "Can we talk?" "Celeste, do you have something against me?" Michael asked directly after sitting down. Celeste shook her head. "No," she answered naturally. "Nothing. I wanted to ask where you heard the news about me having a girlfriend back home?" Michael asked. Celeste retorted, "Didn't you? You even brought her back to Oakwood before." Michael realized Celeste was referring to Mia. He explained briefly, "We broke up a long time ago." Celeste didn't give Michael a chance to continue. She stood up from her seat and smiled politely. "Well, I should head back. I'm meeting Eleanor for some shopping later." The appointment with Eleanor was, of course, a lie, but she truly wanted to leave. Celeste was in such a hurry that she walked right into someone's arms. The next moment, she felt a large hand on her shoulder. The hand pulled her away from the person she'd bumped into and then steadied her in place. "Careful." A low voice came from above her head. Celeste came back to her senses, rubbing her slightly red forehead. "Sorry." She looked up. The other person didn't seem very old, but he had a calm and steady aura that most people lacked. She returned to the private room shortly after and left with Eleanor. Meanwhile, in a room not far across the way, the man Celeste had accidentally bumped into was now leaning on the sofa. His hands were clean, and he only wore a wristwatch. "Mr. Sterling, here is the schedule for the exhibition tomorrow." There were only 2 people in the room. Besides the man in a dark gray suit sitting on the sofa, there was a younger man wearing glasses with slicked back hair. The latter opened the file on his tablet and handed it to Mark. Mark glanced at it briefly before setting the tablet down. He had finished a meeting at the group headquarters in the morning, flown to a neighboring city for a press conference in the afternoon, and returned in the evening. He raised a hand and pinched the bridge of his nose, closing his eyes. "Did you find the illustrated book I asked you to collect last time?" Mark asked. Assistant Leo paused for a moment. The last time his boss asked him to collect something, it was a first edition work by a local artist. He had looked it up online later and learned it was by an author who drew intense comics. A seller listed it, and it's already shipped. "It should arrive at the office tomorrow," Assistant Leo replied. "Okay," Mark nodded. Leo was genuinely curious. Since Mark joined the company, he had been by Mark's side and considered a close associate of his boss. "Mr. Sterling, is this a gift for a relative's child?" Because his boss didn't seem to show special favor to anyone in the family. Suddenly asking him to seriously track down something that seemed only suitable for children naturally surprised him. Mark shook his head, his tone calm. "I heard Celeste likes it." How did his boss know Miss Celeste's preferences so well? Mark believed that if it was a marriage alliance, he should show some sincerity. On Wednesday evening, Celeste took a car to Capital City. Celeste was flipping through the auction catalog in her hands. Tonight, a 10-carat diamond necklace was being auctioned. The color was very rare, a purplish-pink diamond. "Is there anything you like?" "I'll buy it for you tonight," Celeste said to the person next to her, her eyes still fixed on the auction catalog. Compared to Celeste's outfit, which looked like resort wear but was actually a high-end formal dress, Eleanor's business attire next to her looked much more ordinary. "No need," Eleanor replied without looking up either. In their family, Celeste was the one who spent money, while she preferred making it. Eleanor was holding a tablet, still on a video conference with someone. Eleanor wasn't specifically accompanying Celeste to Capital City tonight. She had a client meeting tomorrow. Even though Celeste was refused, she still wanted to buy something for Eleanor. After the 2 sisters arrived at the auction house, Eleanor finally finished her work. She reached up and rubbed her temples. "What are your plans for tomorrow?" "I heard Dad say you're meeting Mark this weekend." The 2 families would formally meet next week. This meant that, barring any unforeseen circumstances, you and Mark would officially enter a marriage alliance. Celeste calmly said, "Okay." Eleanor understood Celeste, but in the past, she had never been in a relationship. The person she liked had always been Michael, and she had only wanted to marry Michael before. Now, she had not only abandoned her previous plans, but also seemed indifferent to marrying into the Sterling family. Did Michael bully you? Eleanor didn't wait for Celeste to answer before asking again. Forget it, she was used to it after so many years. The auction began quickly. Celeste even saw several familiar faces earlier. The purplish-pink diamond necklace set Celeste wanted was fiercely contested, especially with a mysterious person bidding via phone proxy, matching the price in almost every round. Celeste squeezed her hand. "Who is this person?" she said exasperatedly. Eleanor's trip was just to accompany her to look at the jewelry she liked. "If you want to buy it, we'll raise the bid too. I'll get it for you." After saying this, Eleanor raised her paddle for Celeste before Celeste could react. Seeing the price getting too high and Eleanor calmly about to raise her paddle again, Celeste stopped her. "I don't want it anymore." Eleanor didn't understand. "Didn't you come here for this necklace today? If you like it, buy it." Ultimately, the purplish-pink diamond necklace was won by the mysterious proxy bidder for a hammer price of $300 million. There were only 3 pieces of jewelry in the auction catalog. She was unhappy that both items she wanted had been bought by someone else. Eleanor separated from Celeste the next day to meet her client, while Celeste arranged to meet a friend who had just flown back from vacation in Australia. As soon as Rose saw Celeste, she gave her a big hug. "Celeste, sweetie." Rose was her childhood friend. They had been inseparable from kindergarten through high school. For Rose, they might have only been apart for half a month, but for Celeste, she hadn't seen Rose in over a year. In her previous life, after getting married, she moved overseas with Michael and became melancholic from her once cheerful disposition. Because of Michael's neglect, she constantly doubted herself, becoming more and more withdrawn and less inclined to see her old friends. But having a second chance, Celeste had come to terms with many things. She wouldn't be sad over a man anymore. Rose knew her marriage was over and was happy for her. In all the years Rose had known Celeste, the only time she had seen her cry was a few years ago when Celeste heard Michael had a girlfriend. "So, are you planning to marry that legendary Mark? Is he handsome?" After saying this, she added, "He can't be worse than Michael, right? Otherwise, would you willingly give up on Michael?" "I haven't met him." Celeste scoffed. "But the two families will have an initial meeting this weekend." Rose's ex-boyfriends were all heirs of powerful corporations. She took out her phone and asked a boyfriend for a picture of Mark. Soon, Rose zoomed in on a photo and handed the phone to Celeste. She didn't know which boyfriend she was talking to, but after receiving the message, he had sent back quite a few questions. "What are you doing?" His family is very low-key. Even for things like press conferences, the group's spokesperson handles it. Mark rarely makes public appearances. This picture was taken at a conference this year. It's a bit blurry. Celeste's attention was drawn to the not-so-blurry person in the photo. The picture looked like it was accidentally taken at the reception, not high definition, but clear enough. You could tell the person had a tall, imposing build and an extraordinary demeanor. That figure. Rose, who had now pulled Celeste into a coffee shop, sat on the sofa and leaned on Celeste's shoulder. "Nice, you'll like him." By noon on the day of the formal event, Eleanor returned from working overtime at the company and went upstairs to find her, only to discover Celeste was still drawing on her tablet. Celeste had majored in art in college. "You're not ready yet?" Eleanor asked in surprise, walking in from the doorway. "I thought you were getting ready this morning." "You're meeting a date tonight," Eleanor said. Celeste suddenly sprang up from the bed, exasperatedly reaching out to cover Eleanor's mouth. "Eleanor, you're so annoying. Don't say that." She had an account where she uploaded some cute illustrations. Although she didn't have many followers, they were all very nice, and the comment section loved her work. Celeste shared her illustrations for free in her spare time and felt happy when people liked them. In fact, later, an editor contacted her online, saying they really liked her art style and asked if she wanted to publish an illustrated book. Celeste hadn't tried something like this before and was a bit hesitant. Later, when Michael found out, he only said these things took up time and didn't make any money, telling her not to waste her energy. At the evening dinner, Celeste, dressed in a formal dress, had just stepped out of the elevator with her parents when she looked up and saw the man standing by the private room door. His presence was simply too strong. It was impossible to ignore him. In person, he was even more imposing than in the photo. His narrow eyes looked deep and profound. When Celeste met his gaze, she felt as if she was being scrutinized. She felt a bit uncomfortable but didn't want to show weakness. However, the man in front took 2 steps forward and walked over to greet her parents. It had to be admitted, to outsiders, his words and actions in this scene were exceptionally polite and well-mannered. Celeste looked at the clean hand extended towards her. But in the end, she offered her own hand. Their father saw that Celeste and Mark seemed to have a good initial impression and smiled with satisfaction. At the dinner table, their mother suddenly spoke up. "Celeste, why don't you take Mark to see the city lights?" Celeste looked in Eleanor's direction. She didn't want to be alone with Mark. At the dinner table, she could tell her parents were very satisfied with Mark. This man was simply every parent's dream. When Celeste and Mark got into the elevator together, in the confined space, Celeste's discomfort intensified. Mark had known who Celeste was long before. He recognized her the day she accidentally bumped into him. Now, Mark could tell that the person in front of him probably didn't recognize him. Mark noticed Celeste's somewhat avoidant posture and proactively offered the gift bag. "A gift for you," Mark said. Celeste looked up in surprise. "For me." Celeste didn't stand on ceremony and accepted the unmarked paper bag from the man. "Can I see what it is now?" Celeste asked. Celeste took the velvet box from the top of the paper bag without hesitation. The silver-gray gift box looked understated. When she opened it, Celeste held her breath. Inside was the purplish-pink diamond necklace. Celeste was internally shocked. "You were the one who bid via phone proxy that day at the auction." At this moment, Mark also realized what Celeste was talking about. "You mean the auction? You were there that day too." That was quite a coincidence. However, he hadn't been in Capital City that night. He had a meeting he needed to attend personally, so he had arranged for a professional to bid on his behalf. Having a fondness for jewelry wasn't difficult for Mark to satisfy Celeste's preference. Mark understood in an instant. He hadn't known the lady bidding against him on the phone that night was Celeste, so he hadn't given it much thought, simply instructing his proxy to keep raising the bid to ensure he won it. Stepping out of the elevator, the top floor was the hotel's rooftop garden. There was also plenty of garden furniture arranged there, with LED candles on each table, making it look quite romantic. Now, hearing Mark's voice nearby, she reached into the paper bag and felt something square. Celeste was curious and took it out. It was a set of books. She maintained her surprised expression, looked at the illustrated books in her hand, and then looked up at the young man sitting across from her. Besides Rose and Eleanor, no one else had ever given her illustrated books. Celeste truly liked them. In her previous life, this book was also in her hands. She was certain it was the same book. The same printing batch, the signature in the same position. It was the new wedding gift she had received from Mark in her past life. Had this person started trying to understand her so early on? Celeste's mood was complicated for a moment. Back home, Celeste soaked in the bathtub with a face mask on. The room was filled with a faint aroma from the scented candle. Looking at Mark's posts on his account, there were no pictures of family at all. It looked more like a news media account. A message from Mark arrived. Celeste nearly jumped. Tapping on the message from Mark, she saw Mark wanted to take her away for a few days of fun. Mark was now asking her if there was anywhere she wanted to go. Celeste didn't like traveling alone, and the only person she could really travel with was Rose. Rose was a complete island enthusiast, loved all kinds of extreme sports, and also enjoyed diving. Celeste was someone who could go anywhere. Although Mark didn't have experience traveling with someone, it was clear he was used to making decisions. Seeing Celeste's hesitation, Mark directly sent her several attractions near his home, briefly noting the estimated time and fun factor. He followed up with another message, *, when you get to my place in a few days, we'll first check out the marital home. Anything you need, we can add. The house is ready for you to move in anytime. If you want to visit all these places, you can stay there and go whenever you like. Asterisk. Celeste didn't know if it was because the bathroom was too warm or because she saw the words marital home in Mark's message, but her face turned flushed. He had actually prepared the marital home. Celeste, got it. After sending these 3 words, Celeste put down her phone and stood up from the bathtub. In late July, Celeste arrived in Newport. Her timing wasn't ideal. Newport was hosting a global event, and she arrived on the very first day. As the de facto head, Mark had to attend. Celeste didn't mind. Mark had already given her the code to the new house, and she could go see it herself first. Celeste slowly turned around, looking at the man who had taken large strides towards her. Her expression seemed surprised. "Michael," she called out. Michael was dressed in a crisp suit, accompanied by a man who looked like an assistant. He seemed to be on a business trip. "What are you doing here?" Michael was also startled when he saw Celeste. But hearing his voice, Celeste couldn't help but feel a surge of revulsion. Celeste smiled. "I'm here to see Mark." "Celeste, marriage is a serious matter," Michael said. "If you have any thoughts, you can talk to me." Celeste looked at him in confusion, as if she didn't understand. "Huh." Michael pulled at his tie. "You might have misunderstood about Mia and me. I didn't get a chance to explain at the dinner table that day. Let's talk." Michael had never thought Celeste would accept a marriage alliance with the Sterling family in Newport. In his eyes, Celeste was still a young girl. Even if she got married, she probably wouldn't be willing to leave home. He had never paid much attention to the Sterling family in Newport, but now it seemed he had been completely wrong the moment Celeste appeared at the Newport airport. Michael had originally planned to go back and explain things properly to Celeste. He was well aware that his neighbor's sister liked him. He didn't have much special feeling for Celeste. He only didn't refuse the marriage alliance proposed by his parents because of her family's power. Michael thought Celeste wouldn't refuse. Even if the 2 families couldn't form a marriage alliance, they were still childhood friends. "No need." Celeste shook her head resolutely, a hint of triumph in her tone. "Mark arranged for his driver to pick me up at the entrance." Mark had not only arranged for his driver to pick up Celeste, but had also sent his usual car. As she walked out of the airport, Celeste saw a middle-aged man holding a sign with her name on it at the exit. She was certain again that even her own parents wouldn't do something as old-fashioned as this kind of pickup. Mark's usual car was a black Maybach, but the license plate looked unusual. After getting in the car, Celeste took out her phone and sent a message to Mark. Sitting in the back seat, Celeste took a bottle of bottled water from the mini fridge. After unscrewing it and taking a sip, she tapped the screen in front of her. It showed the itinerary planned by the driver. She could clearly see which direction she was heading after leaving the airport. Just as Celeste was looking at the route map, her phone pinged with a message. She looked down and saw it was a message from Mark. Mark had sent his usual driver and car for her. If Celeste were to look back now, she would also see an escort vehicle following behind. Mark was now telling Celeste on his phone that he had prepared a sightseeing itinerary for Newport and uploaded it to the car. She could view it any time from the back seat, and he would pick her up for lunch. Celeste tapped the screen in front of her. Sure enough, a prompt appeared, and when she tapped the map, it changed. The driver was currently taking her to the new house. The driver told her, "Madam, your new house is next to the White House." Celeste paused, then suddenly lowered her head to message Rose. "Celeste, OMG, guess what? Mark, that boss, lives next to the White House. If I hadn't already met him in person, I'd almost suspect my dad sold me off to an old man. Shouldn't a normal person think about whether the house is worth hundreds of millions at a time like this?" As the black Maybach approached the streets near the White House area, Celeste looked out the car window curiously. It was more like an estate. The garage door slowly opened. The house was indeed in a traditional mansion style, something she had never seen in her own home. Below were the new house's garages, with approximately 30 parking spots. When the driver brought Celeste to the elevator entrance, he pointed to the parking spots on the left and introduced, "Madam, These are the vehicles the young mister has prepared for your use. If you need a car, you can contact the butler and he will arrange a driver. All for her? Seeing the pink Lamborghini, it certainly didn't seem like a sports car a man like Mark would like. After all, her fiancé was truly generous. Celeste had been somewhat anxious before coming to the new house. After passing through a courtyard that looked like a golf course, they finally entered the actual new house. The rooms on the east side were made into a huge dining room, and the west side was the kitchen. Just as Celeste was about to walk in, her phone rang. She looked and saw it was a call from Mark. "Hello." Celeste answered the phone. "It's me, Mark." The man's voice quickly came from the other end of the line. "Where are you?" "I'll come find you." "I'm waiting for you at the entrance." Past the living room. Celeste had changed into a denim dress for today. The halter-neck light blue denim dress perfectly accentuated Celeste's long, slender neck. Her delicate waist was probably narrower than a man's palm. Mark walked up to her. "What are you doing?" He only saw her squatting on the ground, picking something up. The next moment, Celeste felt a hand press down on her shoulder, and her bottom seemed to land on something. Celeste's eyes widened in shock. When she turned her head, she knew what her bottom was sitting on. It was Mark's foot. He also sensed Celeste's displeasure. Although Celeste looked like she didn't want to talk, she was speechless at Mark's actions. Mark was silent for a moment. "Sorry," he said. "I wasn't thinking properly just now." He had no prior experience with physical intimacy with someone of the opposite sex. He wasn't sure if Celeste would be willing to have any physical contact with him in that situation. "I'll pick you up next time," Mark added. "Then what were you doing squatting there?" Celeste's voice also dropped 2 degrees. "Oh, nothing." Mark didn't say anything and led her to see the marital home. Celeste felt the man's gaze on her as he spoke. Coming to see the bedroom where they would live together in the future with her fiancé felt a bit awkward. Especially when Celeste saw the king-size bed in the center of the room. For a moment, she almost didn't know where her eyes should land. The bedroom was large, but Celeste was a little afraid to look around too much right now and shyly ran away. Mark had no choice but to follow her out. He walked behind Celeste, looking at the seemingly panicked figure ahead, and smiled slightly. It wasn't early now, so Mark planned to take Celeste to dinner first. It was his fiancée's first time in Newport. Even if he didn't have much time, he would make time to be with her. "Never mind, how about I go to the conference with you?" Celeste suggested. Mark seemed surprised. "The summit might be boring. Either you rest at home this afternoon, and I'll pick you up after the sun sets. I'll take you to see the city lights in the evening. It's not as hot as during the day," Mark said. If she rested at home, would Mark come home to stay? "Actually, after we get married, if it's more convenient for you to stay near the office, you don't have to come back," Celeste said softly. However, when Celeste said this, she felt an undeniable gaze scrutinizing her. Celeste looked up and met Mark's intense eyes. Celeste's heart skipped a beat. She wouldn't back down. "Is there a problem? From the start of this marriage alliance, I never intended for us to pretend to be a couple. Firstly, it would be misconduct, and secondly, it would affect the company reputation. If any other members of the Sterling family had rumors of affairs or romantic entanglements outside, it would affect year-end profits and even equity. As the next family heir, Mark couldn't possibly make a fool of himself with a moment of indulgence. Similarly, Mark didn't want his wife to have any messy ideas in this regard." After saying this, Mark's gaze remained firmly locked on Celeste. One sentence echoed in Celeste's mind. "Our marriage is not just for show. It requires the wife to fulfill her marital obligations, including conjugal duties." Celeste's face flushed slightly. She actively avoided Mark's gaze. "Madam, your luggage has been packed." The butler's voice interrupted her thoughts. Celeste turned, her gaze falling on the box labeled "Fragile, do not press." Inside were her most cherished drawing tablet and sketches the dream she had picked up again after being reborn. Her phone vibrated at that moment. It was a message from Rose. "Did that old man Mark bully you?" Celeste chuckled lightly. How could he possibly bully me? After sending the message, Mark's black Maybach was slowly driving in. All of Celeste's necessities were moved into the bedroom. 3 days later, Celeste accepted Mark's proposal. Watching the tip of the man's ears turn slightly red, she suddenly remembered the wedding gift she received in her previous life, the illustrated book she loved most, on which was written in fountain pen, "Wish to be with Celeste for a lifetime." "What are you thinking about?" Mark's voice broke her train of thought. Celeste twirled the small, painted figurine in her hand. "Thinking about when you learned to say sweet talk." The tip of the man's ears turned red again, but he seriously took up the thread. "Since I found out you're afraid of the dark and leave a nightlight on before bed." He pulled out a gift box from his suit pocket. "This is the pink diamond bracelet I got last time. I had someone buy it from a private collector." Celeste looked at the shimmering bracelet, suddenly remembering the regret from the auction before her rebirth. It seemed some missed opportunities were compensated by fate in another way. She let Mark put it on for her. Ding! Her phone suddenly rang. It was a call from Michael. Celeste stared at the name flashing on the screen. Mark hung up the phone, silently flipping it over. This action made Celeste's heart race. Mark slowly moved closer now, his nose touching her forehead before he kissed her. "Aren't you going to answer?" Mark's breath brushed against her ear, but there was no hint of questioning, only concern. Celeste shook her head and put the phone in the drawer. Just as she finished speaking, arguing suddenly erupted outside the window. She raised an eyebrow and looked out, seeing Michael being stopped by security outside the courtyard, his face ashen as he glared at the camera on the gate. "I want to see Celeste." His voice held a hint of urgency. Mark's hand lightly pressed her waist. Through the floor-to-ceiling window, they watched Michael go from initial anger to gradually losing control, finally squatting on the street corner and pulling out his phone. Celeste's phone vibrated nonstop in the drawer, the screen lighting up. Celeste, I was wrong. That day at the airport, I realized how much I cared about you. Want a reply? Mark's breath feathered her ear, but he didn't seem to intend to interfere. Celeste chuckled, blocked the number, and turned to hug Mark's waist. "I'd rather taste that delicious yogurt you mentioned last time." She felt the body and her arms stiffen slightly. Mark picked her up and placed her on the bed, his broad shoulders pressing down on her body. Mark lowered his head and kissed the top of her head, slowly moving down, burying his face in Celeste's chest. Mark's heartbeat vibrated against her, tickling her eardrums. "But the yogurt needs 3 times the sugar. You said it was too sour last time," Mark added, then wrapped his strong arms around her waist and gently entered her body. 3 months later, Celeste stood in the bridal shop fitting room, looking at the white lace skirt in the mirror, suddenly remembering her eyes swollen from crying in the bathtub the day she was reborn. At that time, she thought she would never find a suitable marriage in this life, but she hadn't expected to meet Mark. The man who would bring her warm milk when she stayed up late drawing, who would secretly study the comics she liked, and who was even willing to redecorate her studio for her. Celeste walked out of the fitting room. "Why are you frowning?" She reached out and smoothed Mark's furrowed brow. The man pointed to a storyboard panel on his phone screen showing the characters embracing. "The kissing pose isn't right. It's easy to strain the girl's neck." Celeste raised an eyebrow. "Oh! How do you think it should be improved?" The next second, she was gently pulled into his arms. Mark's hand cupped the back of her head. "Like this," he said in a low voice, holding her flushed face in his hands. "Now you should call me husband."